Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do day 1 of Ornament Week 2019. We're going to make these 2 fabric wrapped ornaments. They're going to be a little bit different than the one we made previously. They're going to be smaller, but all the products are going to be from the Dollar Tree. We're going to use this medium-sized bowl with the hobnail and then one of these little soccer balls. They're made out of foam. We're going to use 1 sheet of this fabric from Dollar Tree. If you can't find it, you really can use whatever you want. And then for the other one, we're going to use a headband. The headband is the perfect size, or practically perfect size, for the little bowl. We're going to use some of the both kinds of burlap ribbon just to jazz it up, and then whatever embellishments, of course, glue gun and scissor as well. So I'm just showing you that really quick flash was the $1.47 fat quarters from Walmart. You can get red and black if red and black is your color this year. But I wanted to do the 3 of these together. They just wouldn't have all fit in one video, and I thought it would be a nice way to introduce Ornament Week. I know Ornament Week was a lot of you were really excited about it last year, so I figured we'd bring it back this year. So this medium check fabric out of between the fleece and the headband, this is sort of a medium size. I wanted to show you, you could use the fleece for this too if you wanted to make them all matchy. That's 100% an option. But I wanted to show you, if you take the square fabric that from this isn't really a fat quarter from the Dollar Tree, it's like a 20-inch square. I think it's 20 inches. You need to get yourself a rubber band, and you want to pull up the short sides and meet them all in the middle. Make sure you have it nice and centered. And then we're going to pull up the corners. And as we pull up the corners, we're going to smooth with our hands. And then we're going to tie it off with the rubber band. What I like to do, this is just a Dollar Tree rubber band. I like to double it up first just to get a little bit more of a firmness to get started. And then I tucked the fabric over. Now this is just an option. I will tell you that nothing is getting glued to this. And we're just going to make it so that you could remove it if you want to in the future. This is just an option. I want to show you this one has no hot glue. So we're just going to use a little bit of jute, and we're going to kind of create like the look of a hanger. You know how the hangers are like little squares on top? So we folded the fabric over, and then we're just wrapping it with a piece of jute. We will glue to the jute if just like as an option, but we're not going to glue to the fabric or to the ball, so that you could reuse this again if you want to. Okay, so we just did the wrap it around and tuck the end under like my dad taught us. I've got it in a lot of videos lower down if you need to see it somewhere else. But basically what we do is you create a loop of fabric, a loop of jute. You wrap around the loop, you put the end through the loop, and then you pull the loop through so that the end of the string gets tucked under the work. So for this one, we're going to use the natural edged burlap. Now this is an old roll, as you can tell, and it was very hairy. But I didn't want to make it a full width either, because this ball is sort of between, it's not the biggest one. It's sort of a medium size. It just would have been too big to use just the full width of the ribbon. So I've trimmed off both edges, and then I've cut it in half. And then we're going to use half around from one end to the other. And like I said, I'm just going to glue this to the jute that we already created. So this way, again, we could reuse that fabric if we want to, and we could reuse this ball if we want to in the future. If you only intend to make these forever and ever, to keep them forever, then you can go ahead and glue to your fabric. That's fine. And you can go ahead and do any of the other tops for the top as well. Okay, so now I'm just gluing to the fabric, and then I've taken a little bit of the jute that we're going to create a hanger with. Again, you want this to be as long as you want to. I know that sounds like a silly thing, but we're not actually measuring. We're just going to make it as long as we want it. So I didn't have it placed properly in the center. What I want to do is I want to utilize the stripes on the fabric to find middle, basically. Whatever stripe seems to go across, whatever row, seems to go across the bottom, and then make it perpendicular to that. And again, we're just going to glue it to that jute that we created, all right? And now I'm just trimming down some more for the hanger. You don't have to trim this. If you want that more primitive look, that really rustic farmhouse, go ahead and leave your shaggy burlap. That would really add to that aesthetic as well. Okay? So now we're just going to create the hanger, and then basically we're making a loop as big as you want or as small as you want. And then we're going to create a little bit of a bow. And actually, I have it out of order. We're actually going to glue the bow on here first. We're just making one of those really simple bows that's almost like like a support ribbon with the jute tied around it. And then we'll put the hanger on there. And now you can make the hanger as long as you want. I'm cleaning this up, all of this hair. Look at all the pile of extra hair there. I wish we could do something else with it. Now, as far as decorating is concerned, you can do as little or as much as you want to. You can go for more of a modern farmhouse aesthetic, or you can go more of a rustic farmhouse aesthetic. You could use pine cones, cotton, or what have you. What I'm going to opt to use are these 97-cent picks that I found at Walmart. They are like a glittered lamb's ear with white snow-covered berries, which they're so cute. And we're just going to use pieces of it. But first we're going to tie on the hanger. What I'm doing is I've created that bow using sort of a piece of burlap that we created into like a support ribbon. We pinched the middle and tied it off with a piece of jute. Left the piece of jute kind of long because then I used it to tie the bow onto that little nubbin. Then I also used that string that was left over to tie the two pieces that are going to create the hanger pretty tightly onto the back as well. So this way I don't have to worry about it coming off, but again, I'm not gluing. So this really cute little piece of greenery, if you don't want to glue, you could skip it all together if you want to leave this project. If you are a person who has limited mobility and you don't like hot glue, or if you're working with somebody who's got a developmental delay and you don't want them to use hot glue, or a child, then you can go ahead and skip this, or you can leave the embellishments on the stem and then just tuck them into the knot. So for the second one, this ball is much smaller. What we're going to do is we're going to dissect this headband. We're going to do is we're going to cut off the elastic, and the first I didn't cut off quite far enough in one piece, but I'll show you how you can rectify that. But you can feel where the elastic is ended and where the headband starts. You don't want to cut too far above the elastic because then you will kind of run out of room, but you could disguise that if you need to. What I've done is I've turned it inside out, so this way I can see the stitching, and I can lay the stitching on the edge and very, very easily just remove the stitching. Now this technique is going to be very similar to the one we did with the scarf on the big ball, but this is going to be smaller, and then we're going to go ahead and fix up those sides that we left to cover with ribbon before. Okay, so we're going to pull the top and bottom just basically across this, and then we're going to fix up the sides. Now you can glue these sides down any way you want to. As you can see, I'm kind of trying to create like almost like a darting pleat. But if you want to just add hot glue to the whole area and push it up, you can. If you, want to make this on a smaller ball, it'll fit perfectly. You can do that as well. But what I'm going to do is we're going to take the elastic part of the headband apart, and we're going to use the fabric off of that to fix those spaces. This is different than the first technique we did with the big buffalo check scarf because we didn't cover those spaces that it left. We covered them with ribbon, with burlap, but we're not going to do that here. We are going to add the burlap, but we're not going to use it to cover the space, if you know what I mean. So once you have all that down, you just want to go ahead and be careful. You see I'm using my silicone spatula thanks to Melody Reed. She was an integral part of me knowing about this idea. Actually, she gifted me this as well. So after I have all of those sides down nice the way I like them, and that side is going to kind of have the ribbon over it anyway, so it's going to look mucky, but it's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take the elastic out. So we're going to cut just below the edge where the elastic is sewn. You see the elastic slides right out. Obviously you want to keep that because you never know when you're going to need a piece of elastic for a project. And then for one, I wanted to show you, I just left it sewn together, and I cut a piece just to cover on the one side and glued it down. And it did kind of leave like a puffy tube. But for the other side, I went ahead and I cut it flat. If I had my druthers after doing both ways, I would cut it flat. But I just figured if you're tired and you don't want to, I want to show you that it will work anyway. Because we're going to go ahead and add that burlap trim around the edge anyway. Okay? And you can see it doesn't really like, you know, it does have the check pattern. It does still look like we just created this in one continuous piece of fabric. So I like it like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take, this is the wire edged burlap from the Dollar Tree. We're going to take it and we're going to cut off the wires and we're going to cut it in half. I always keep these wires. You don't have to. But before they started to carry wire edge jute, I used to use these whenever I needed a wired covered jute, like for pumpkin tendrils or just really any time you think you might need a piece of wired edged jute. Then I'm going to just measure around the ball before I cut it in half so I don't end up cutting too much. And then I cut it in half because I'm going to need one piece to go north-south, one to go east to west. Okay, and then we're going to crisscross. So I decided, I'm like, do I want to put this burlap down the middle or do I want to try to cover one of the edges? And I just moved it a little off the center just to cover one of the glued edges. And now we're going to create our hanger the same way, and then we're going to create a bow. It's going to be a different bow because each one of these I'd like to have something a little bit different for you. Okay, I don't want to keep repeating the same thing because then why? It's just boring just watching me make the same thing 5 times. So for this one, we're going to create the hanger. Again, you wanted to decide your determination of how long you want it to be. So for this bow, I'm going to create a 2-loop bow, just like my traditional bow making is always. So we're going to take 2 loops of fabric, one a little smaller, like a little shorter than the other. You're basically going to loop them onto each other. You're going to overlap the cut ends by at least 1/4 of an inch. You want to overlap them as, my rule of thumb is usually as overlap them as much as the ribbon is wide. That's my good rule of thumb. Because then we're going to do is we're going to take the long piece of tail, which is pretty much twice the size, and we're going to tie it around the middle. And what that does is it creates the quote-unquote knot as well as the tails. And you don't have to worry about tying a perfect bow. You know, like how can you tie a perfect bow? This is just a really easy way to make a traditional looking bow, but very simply, okay? So now this one will have glue. We glued the 2 pieces together. We're gluing the loop hanger on there. What I'm doing is I'm gluing both sides. So I glued it down and then I flipped it over and I glued it flipped over so it has like a little bit more strength and security. And then I'm gluing the underside to put the bow down there. And for this one I am gluing just the sprigs of leaves and a couple of berries. I took the berries off and just clustered them together onto 2 leaves. And that's it. Here's how they all look together. I love their scale size. I love that. If you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share with friends and family. Anybody who might be interested in learning either of these techniques, these bow making or the design or the fabric or any of that stuff. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe, and when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, you take care, God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye.